15 or 16 years that we've been representing George's work, that he has agreed to speak about his work in a way that he hasn't done before, which is, for the first time, we're going to be asking him questions about his life growing up, what it was like growing up in Romania and then escaping, moving to France, his artistic career, and the symbolism in his work, which is a world unto its own. So I would like to introduce Georges Mazilu, who I have had the privilege of knowing as a friend and a colleague for the last 15 years. And I'm very honored that he is here once again for an exhibition in our gallery.
Give me a break.
And I want to tell you a little bit about George before we get started with him talking and asking questions. We came upon George's work through another artist that we had met before him named Philippe, who was a Romanian artist that we met in, I guess, 1992. And at that point in time, Tryon said, I have this artist that I know that you have to see. He's incredible. You're going to love his work. So he sent a catalog of George's work, and it was so beautiful that immediately we thought, we have to get in touch with him. Where is he? We have to begin showing his work. We fell in love with it just from seeing the initial catalog that we received. The work it struck us as like something we'd never seen before. This world that's half imagination, half reality. Where is this coming from for him? So ultimately we were able to come into contact with George, who had escaped Romania and was living in France, in Paris at that time, and we began to show his work. And over the course of the last 15 years, his paintings have evolved, his career has evolved, and I'm happy to introduce to you Georges Mazilu, and we thank him for being here and thank all of you for being here as well. So the way we would like to structure this evening is as a question and answer type of thing. George feels more comfortable if the audience asks him questions, and then he will respond. I'll start by giving you just a very brief introduction as to the history of this work. George grew up in a town in southern Romania, and he moved to Bucharest because he had shown great artistic talent from a very young age. He has been drawing and painting since he was a child. You sold your first painting at the age of 11?
11, that's
Yeah.
right.
And so it was very clear.
It was more price.
I'm glad they've increased rather than decreased. So he's had a very long artistic career at this point. And I would like to point out that one thing I find personally fascinating is the Eastern European artistic training. When George was doing drawings primarily, when you were younger, in southern Romania, and when his talent was first recognized, he was doing pretty realistic drawings, pretty concrete images. Is this true?
It is true, yeah.
And so then he was sent to a special art high school in Romania to learn more about figure drawing and specific media, and then to the Grigorescu Fine Art Institute in Bucharest, which I have actually visited. And it's it's definitely the top art institute in Romania, and where most of the most known and remembered Romanian artists have attended Grigorescu Fine Art Institute. And at that point, what I find really interesting about the training is that you spend how many years on the human figure?
Since I was very young, I was attracted by the human figures. So I have to tell you that I didn't used to draw like a child. As soon as I had a pencil in my hand, I tried to represent things as they are, not as children imagine them. So I try to make them as realistic as possible. So some of my drawings that I drew when I was age 5 or 6, some of them were just reproduction after masters, like Leonardo. I tried to make a drawing with the same skills, and I never, as far as I can remember, I never had this vision of the world as a child can have. A little man made by with a round shape and two
like
sticks,
a stick figure.
a stick figure, and so yeah, that's curious. It was very different from all I could see ever since in the children's drawings. So there was something wrong with me, I think. If I show those drawings to a psychoanalyst, she would say that I have some problem. Ever since, I tried to get as close as possible to a realistic approach of the human figure, and within the years, so I made all the possible available art schools. Even before the high school, I underwent some art classes when I was 12 or 13, and then I went to a special art high school, and the teaching was very strict. Life model, which is used to draw a few days on the same drawing, so charcoal and so on. In the Fine Arts Institute, when I was a student of fine art school, yes, the study of the human body was required in every section, and the studies which would last about 1 or 2 weeks sometimes, 1 or 2 figures, standing figure, nudes or portraits. So the study of the human figure was some constant priority for all the art students. That's why it remains so deeply implemented in my inspiration. And maybe I had a certain personal inclination to the human body, because I also studied landscape and still life, because it was required in the art classes. But I quit those subjects later, since I was most attracted by the human figure, especially by the face. I used to draw while in classes in mathematics or whatever. I used to draw my comrades' faces, profiles, or faces of teachers, faces of all my notebooks were filled up with sketches.
Were they?
We started, at the beginning we started with notes, and from the end there were sketches, figures, portraits.
Were they portraits or caricatures?
Also caricature. Well, depends. If it were schoolgirls, which I thought they were
They were portraits.
Bad teachers. Caricatures.
Do you still have those, by the way?
I still conserve some of those old drawings. Yes, I still conserve some, but they are in the bottom of old boxes. Faculty, then that was the teaching which was required. It was very strict. We it was a traditional teaching concerning the major part of our teaching was life model, still life, or compositions, and later on we had to find our own personal class, and little by little every student tried different ways, different approach, different styles. So as we were visiting the history, the art history, the whole world, all ages, the influences were unavoidable. So sooner or later, someone was tempted by Cubism or by Surrealism, and so on, according to everyone's inclinations or inspiration. And that was my own taste too. During my years of studying years, I also made different experiences like Cubism and Surrealism, and I ended up making kind of abstract painting because it was also a pressure around the environment was the cultural environment was pushing us to avant-garde, to new ways of expression, and the ones who continue to make figurative art were kind of they not much consideration for people who continue to work in the traditional way, or only choosing a figurative style.
Was this in Romania?
That was in Romania, because Romania was not exactly what people are tended to think, completely close to the Western influences.
So they allowed you to study abstraction?
They allowed us, and even there was a part of the elite, so the intelligentsia, who was very tempted by the new trends in the Western countries. So abstract painting and conceptual art were already on the Romanian art stage, and well, it was kind of snobby, but many people thought that if you continue to paint in the traditional way, it was not valuable. So the normal way was to evolve to abstract, and then to conceptual, and then to a minimalist, and then to nothing. So that's a little bit the way that I took myself, and it was not bad, because that allowed me to try to go as deeply as possible in my unconscious to search which is my most personal way, which style should I choose, which one is the closest to my own personality. And of course that's a challenge when you have all the liberty in the world to choose whatever you want. If I had to live in the 17th century in certain art school, well, there would have been no choice. It would have been normal to choose my master's way, and possibly to to go beyond. Instead, in the second half of the 20th century, we had the liberty to choose whatever style you want, and that's a really difficult matter. And well, it's a challenge that meant for me many years of research and failures and torn canvases and canvases which were covered with 10 layers of paint because I didn't know exactly where I want to go and what I was looking for. But it was a perpetual unsatisfaction, and little by little I ended up to something which satisfied me, not completely, but up to a certain level, and probably that materialized in a show in Romania. It was in 1981. The last show I made in Romania. It was showed abstract paintings, most abstract, a few drawings, which we would still see some reminiscences of bodies of figurative art, but mostly it was abstract. But it was rather well received by the public, by the audience. That allowed me to sell the paintings to some foreign collector who paid me with foreign currencies, with dollars and sterling pounds. And it was very important. I tell you why. Because I had decided to leave Romania because the air was too thick and unbreathable, and so I had this idea in mind since many years. But for someone who had no connection abroad, no relatives to invite him to go, there was only one way to do it legally, and to ask a visa, he had to have some currency into a bank account. But some currency which had to be legally earned. So we had to had some justification for it. And so that show allowed me to deposit some sterling pounds and dollars in my bank account, and with that I went to the different embassies and asked for several visas. I had 7 visas on my passport because I had no idea where I will settle down. So I just wanted to travel a little bit and to see as much as possible before I choose a place to live. And you want me to go further in detail to this
where
story?
did you go first?
I stopped first in Vienna for 3 days. Well, Vienna is so brilliant, so shining, so bakers were getting survived.
What year was that?
That was in 81, in December 81. And then I went to Germany, where I had friends who allowed me to stay in their homes for 1 month. So, well, I was impressed. It was very different from Romania, of course, and it was very, very far, but I still wanted to see more. And I reached Paris, and after 1 month of drifting through Germany, because I've been in several places, 2 or 3 places before, I felt as I went back home when I was in Paris, because there's much similarity between Paris and Bucharest, and Also the fact that
Spoke
I
French.
spoke French before, so I felt as I went back home, well, in a better version. So, after a few months, I applied for political asylum. And that was it. So I didn't accept it very quickly. But I had, the issue is that I had to find a way to earn my living, and hopefully I had a second profession at hand. I used to be a photographer. While I was in Romania, I could earn my living rather with photography than with painting. There are not very many art collectors in Romania. So as I had those skills as a photographer, I could find a job in a photo lab and at another one, and I've done it for 1 year or so until I found an art dealer who accepted to buy my work.
Who was that?
Who was that? No, that wasn't me.
Wasn't it Peter Bible?
No, this was someone in Paris. So he sponsored me for some time. Then I could show my work in an art fair, Salon, Salon de Tonya and others in Paris until a gallery noticed my work and invited me to show. And how long did it last? About 2 or 3 years. I had my first solo show in Paris in the gallery, and it was very successful. And ever since, I think things went better and better, and then other galleries invited you to show abroad in Holland and Belgium, until I met Philippe. That was in 92 or 93.
Yeah.
And then started my collaboration with Turner Carroll Gallery.
Okay, now let's let these guys ask some questions.
Anytime.
Yeah.
You went to special schools in Romania as a youngster. How were you able to afford that, or was that just something that was available to people who had special talents, or how did that work?
Yes. It was it was a competition. No, not everybody could have access. Everybody could apply, but there was a competition. So
Was it
only a
state
few.
sponsored? You didn't have to pay for it.
Of course, absolutely. All the schools were state-sponsored. We even received scholarships when we were accepted as students. So it was a very hard competition. More you advanced in age and the higher degree of school, more competition was tough. Tougher competition was. So I remember when I applied to a Fine Arts Institute, Grigorescu Institute in Bucharest, even with the best results that I had as a former student in Tonica High School.
Which is a really prestigious art high school.
Yeah.
In Bucharest.
And I failed the first year, so that's why I missed to be the student of
Baba.
Corneliu Baba.
And Corneliu Baba is the most revered father of contemporary Romanian art. I mean, we have the brochure somewhere.
So the rate of admitted students was about 1 to 10 to 1 to 20. So 20 students who applied. People who applied, only 1 or 2 were admitted because they were just places.
Were they residential schools? Did you live there?
No. I guess you could, but as I lived in Bucharest at that time, I didn't need, so that's why I hesitated. But yes, they had a internat,
A dormitory.
dormitory for people who came from different places. Yes.
Many of these characters I call little people.
Yes.
How long have you been doing little people, and what got you toward that model?
Well, let's try to give
An answer.
the best possible answer. A question which is quite new. Well, I try to focus my attention on the most expressive parts of the human body, and I think the face is very expressive. The nose is very expressive. Inside the face and the ear, and then the feet are something that I like very much to draw, and the hands also. But from here to there, it's not much very interesting to see. I mean, you can concentrate it in a smaller part. So that's why I'm shortening the bodies, because I think they occupy too much place on the canvas.
Because they're all very expressive, you're right. All the pictures you emphasize are the expressive ones.
That's what I'm trying to do well in the best way, to go as deep as possible and find the most that expression. That's the expression.
To me, a lot of the characters that aren't quite real seem to come from a place of the subconscious or your imagination. It's almost like the imaginary realm or the realm of other reality is existing with reality.
Honestly, I think I don't have much imagination, so sometimes
So maybe they're real.
I miss it in a way. So I try to build something to fill up that emptiness. So I have no idea before I start.
So you don't
painting.
actually see this little character
No.
of a
Not
cat
at all.
dog on the right. It just emerges as you
It
create
emerges,
shapes.
yeah, that's why I'm painting, because I want to see something interesting which I can see around me and in my imagination. So I built everything starting from nothing, or starting from just a little accident. I don't know, draw a curve on a piece of paper, and then little by little I complete it with other lines, and then with other shades, and at some point I see something, and I go beyond that. I try to pursue this query, and I get more and more interested and excited with what I'm doing, and so then the show starts for me, and I'm kept in the game, and so I go as far as possible, and I become a partner inside this game. So in some way I feel I'm the comrade of the guys.
Yesterday, when you were talking about, you were explaining this painting to some people, and that has something that I would call a little person. I mean, it's little over there.
Yeah,
and,
well, yes.
and it's unusual, somewhat. And so the woman was asking you how you came up with this character on the end, and it was very interesting to me what you said. Can you tell
So
these
I
guys
said
how you
for formal reasons I needed a smaller figure in the corner, not the same size, and but I couldn't reduce that much the face, and because otherwise for perspective reasons it would go too far in behind. So I shortened the body, since I thought that only those elements, the face and the feet and the breast, is enough to feature what I wanted to make out of that figure. Some female chicken who is running the stage because possibly scared by that guy with his sword, long sword. As long as it functions, the figure functions like this, you can see a figure who was running, trying to flee the place where something unusual happens. There's some danger. So what is important in that case? The feet they are running. And the expression on the face.
No, Georges, you said something very important. I have long seen these pieces as a small piece of theater, and you said on the stage.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Right?
That's right, because it fits to what I was saying before. I'm building those people. They are not copies of existing people. So they are puppets in a way, and some live puppets. It's a mixture between reality and imagination. So yeah, I accept and adopt the term of stage theater. Yeah.
She has a question here.
Yes.
The portrait on your left there seems to be quite a departure from the rest of the work. And although, I mean, to me it's a master sort of a Renaissance piece, but you seem to have gotten very caught up in the detail of the flowers in her hair, and you call it, I believe, flower. Where were you going with that kind of an image?
I'm not sure I get very well your question. Can you be more specific? So the starting point you mean was a Renaissance figure?
Well,
or
it sort
something?
of looked like a
Yes.
classical pose and
And the rest is
engaging-
different.
Yes,
and
slightly.
Why is that?
Yes.
For
Just for well, I don't know. I wouldn't.
I think she's
yeah,
saying
like
you focused so much into all the details of this woman,
yes.
and you focused much more on her and the flowers in her hair and everything than you did on some of the figures in these other works. And why is that?
But, it's not my opinion. I think the flowers are very detailed and well, because I'm not a painter of flowers, so for me this is the farthest I can go to in details while painting flowers. You know, for me they are really very detailed, since I'm mostly a figure painter than a flower painter.
But was it a metaphor for something that you wanted to say about that particular woman, or was it simply an exercise for you to focus that much detail?
Maybe both, because yes, a woman, flowers and woman, that goes together well, you know, in the hair, and also because sometimes I have the flowers. Reminiscences of flowers in my eyes. Sometimes I'm painting the country. I have a studio in the country and a lot of little small flowers around me, and I like to look at them, and some remain in my brain, and I never use the models for a flower. I try to represent them from what I retain in my memory. But I try to integrate them as possible in the whole. So if I understand, you see some kind of the flowers are cut off from this. This
Well, it
they
reminded
belong
me.
to different.
It reminded me of like a Dutch master, you know, some of those beautiful still lives of Dutch
Yes.
paintings, but they have so many layers of meaning beyond the excellence of the draftsmanship. So I thought perhaps you were. I mean, it's a captivating piece. I just love it. But I
Maybe
curious.
Another explanation is that I wanted to focus on the figure, not on the flowers. The flowers are, well, they are decorative, but the main interest is on the figure itself.
And the detail in the figure. Can you talk a little bit about your Madonna paintings?
Like what? Yeah, I can talk even more. if you-
Like the difference in, I've heard you talk before about the difference in the way you paint the Madonnas versus the way you paint the
You want me
other
here to tell
figures.
that I prefer, that
Painting.
I give my preference to women's faces, and I privilege them, making always them beautiful, while I'm less regarding with the males' faces. That's what you wanted to hear me say. Well, it's true, but I think it's natural as a man, and I prefer to focus my attention on women's faces. So.
And in something you said yesterday, we had a group of people in here for a long time, over many days, the last few days. And one of the things you were telling them is the contrast in your compositions between the women and the men.
Yeah, sometimes I join to a beautiful lady, man who's not really handsome, so that makes a kind of contrast and reveals more beauty of the woman. Yeah, it's a trick, so I can use it successfully, and it works.
And I heard George say also that when he's painting the Madonna images, one thing you said that it's traditionally throughout the history of art, even though this is not a Madonna like Mary, throughout the history of art, it's typically men who are painting these images of Madonnas. And that was interesting to me.
Yeah, that's what I believe. I had the privilege to talk to a master in the 2nd century. But I think when he painted Madonna, he had in mind also the ideal face of the woman, and it was only half a religious feeling, I guess, and the other one was as mine is. I mean, trying to go as far as possible in as deep as possible in perfection, trying to paint beautiful faces and dreamlike and to make how should I say to fill up some emptiness, to temper some frustrations. All men dream into faces like this, I guess. Well, not all, but most.
You said your last show in Romania was abstract work. I was wondering how long it took for you to find what your great interest was, and when you came out of that period, was this the sort of style of work that you came across, or has there been subsequent leaps in your career?
Yeah, well, it wasn't exactly like this. It was figurative, but it was more. It's difficult to explain without showing images. We didn't think.
We do, yeah.
We have
We should pass it around.
Round
We have,
book.
Yeah, it is, this book is the work when it was more abstract, so we can pass this around.
Yeah,
And
practically that was the
see,
my first
Oh, yeah.
my first
Here, we pull that up.
paintings of the new style that I started after I immigrated. Yeah, things like this. So
This is the most recent.
they're figurative, but in some of them are hybrid, almost abstract. If you take out that moon-like figure and the hands, the rest can be an abstract painting, and you can compare them with my former abstract paintings. There are much similarity in them, but of course we didn't think about breaking some items from that.
Also, some of these little details are part of that abstract.
Right. I think they continue from that abstract time period,
Yeah.
and now they're in the clothing, like right there. And in the attachments in the arms, and the sort of
There is some continuity.
And you can see it in the drapery on that figure on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, these ones. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you have you said you let the story build around while you're painting,
Yes.
and that looks like behind you, that looks like a very specific dialogue or story is going on. Is that true?
Well, that explanation was especially true for simpler items when I paint a figure, for instance, or a face, but while building up larger composition, multiple figure composition, well, the process is more complex. I mean, I put together more sketches, more one figure compositions, and then well, it's a different project. I have to make them live together, even if they come from different periods, and they are not really from the made out of the same stuff. I mean, I put together a nude which is very real to some kind of imaginary freak, and yeah, I must make them live together in the same atmosphere to find the better source, so that they can live together, and you don't perceive them as two different items just by chance put together. So it's that's a more advanced stage in the work. I mostly try to explain you the basic process while I'm painting a figure like that, or just an animal like that. I can the camera, please. Thank you. Turn the camera, please. For instance, let's talk about this figure. I imagine when I start to draw the sketch for this figure, I don't start with the eye or with the nose or with the legs. I'm starting with those curves, you know, things. It's like writing. And at some point, unconsciously, I make a little spot which becomes my imaginary an eye, And then I build around it the ears and all the rest. And then this figure needs another one to dialogue with. And that's the way it goes, basically. You know, there are further stages, more and more complex until I reach this stage. Well, it's a long way. But the most important was for me to explain you basically how it all starts. Once I have a figure there and another there and another there, I can try to reunite them in the same place, like we are here, you know, and to see what happens, and try to make it out as brilliantly as possible, and to not to fail, but to make a success.
Do you work on one painting at a time, or are you working on several?
Well, most of the time I try to finish a piece when I started it, especially the small ones, because it's very important to conserve the unity of a piece, to have the same mood, and I hardly can focus my concentration on a piece more than a few days, a week or more. So on a big piece like this, it's better to have another one to work on, and when I'm too tired working to one piece, I turn it to the wall and I take the other one, so I come back with fresher eye. Yes.
Do you have a specific emotion that you hope to elicit from the audience, or when you said that you hope for a success from a piece, what would you define as success?
Well, success. I didn't mean commercial success, even if it counts for much. Not this life, of course. No, it's a way to find a harmonic link between me and the rest of the humankind. I, like every artist, I think it's legitimate to try to be understood, and that people love you by loving your work. So, like everybody who needs a friendly approach of the people around. So that's what I meant. So, that's what I'm trying to do while putting different figures into the same space in the composition. And as I said before, they sometimes come from different ages. So a sketch can be dated 3 or 5 years ago, and when I was another man, another person, because everybody changes in years, and with a sketch dated today, of course, that can create a conflict, and the challenge is to make it out in a harmonic way. So that's what gives colors to a composition, makes it like something alive. When there is a harmony, and in the same time, kind of some different hidden antagonisms between figures, and more they are more different. They are. It's more difficult to unite them in a coherent universe, but stronger the expressionism that came at the moment. So, is there any questions?
And what, as I know in writing, the titles evolves at different times. When does your title usually evolve that you give to it?
The title will come always when the painting is finished. And the best title is when it comes up suddenly by, I don't know, by Holy Ghost falling on me, something like this. Sometimes it's so striking, so obvious. It comes along. Sometimes I had to look for it a little bit more. Well, I don't want to be too specific with my titles because I don't want to give my key to the people who look at my paintings. So I just give a little hint, so everybody can write his own story.
How long does it, now I know you mentioned a while ago that, like a large piece like that, you can come and go. Over what time period does it take to do that masterpiece?
The process of painting it can last about two weeks, but when I have a project which is very advanced, and it's important for the composition of this size to know exactly where I'm going to. It's difficult to shake, to hesitate. Once you put a black spot somewhere, it's difficult to come with some a white face on it. So the project must be very advanced, and the project itself can last much more. I don't mean I work every day on a project, but I can start a sketch and then come back to it a week later or 2 months later, and sometimes a project started 2 years ago, and before I decide to make a painting out of it. So I have a lot of projects in reserve which are waiting. At the moment they are enough expressive to deserve to be put on canvas.
As you were speaking about your process as a young artist, kind of emerging artist, and it sounded very similar to what anyone might in the West have experienced too, just kind of getting caught up in abstraction and conceptualism and finding your own voice eventually. And for you, there was such a profound shift in your environments during that time. You're going from Eastern Europe to Paris. And I wonder what subsequently your relationship with Romania has been, about the profound changes that occurred there, and if that has impacted you as an artist, if you would want to speak to that at all.
It might be, certainly. I lived 30 years in Romania, so that certainly left some prints on my brain, my personality, so it's true. It's true. I'm positive.
I just wonder if anything about that is articulating the images, and thinking about that you'd want to speak to.
Probably most of those fears come from very remote areas of my unconscious. Certainly, I can recognize many people of my family or friends that I knew 20 or 40 years ago. They are still fresh in my memory, and I don't mean I try to portraitize them, but sometimes the figures make me think of those people. And in fact, most of the people remarked that there's some familiarity between among those faces. They all belong to the same family. And it happened to me to be recognized in a show by someone who didn't know who I am, but watching the pictures of me, he said, "It's you, the artist," because he recognized my face. So the same physiognomy, and sometimes I see my daughters or some of my relatives or old friends. Yeah, it's something that. But I don't do it on purpose. Maybe just to rise like this naturally from my that's consciousness.
Thank you. Thank you, George.
Thank you.